Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and welcome to the Girl Meets World review. Last time, we saw the return of Sean, as well as the proposal that changed everything. This time around, we wrap up the three-part Maya saga with her trying to put the finishing touches on who she really is. Spoiler warning now, you all know the drill. With all that said, let's dive into the aptly named Girl Meets True Maya. We kick things off with Riley being Riley and doing her happy singing thing, before Maya comes in with plans to do something truly big, seeing as how her former rebellious self is seemingly back. This is later paralleled by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that famously destroyed all of Pompeii, which is kind of a weird way to go just in terms of what this episode is trying to say, but we'll get into that later. Then we get this really strange bit where Farkle is pretending to be a volcano and Lucas is doing a terrible British accent, and wow, did this get off track quickly. All of this is, of course, just an elaborate backdrop to what Maya is going through, but from where I'm standing, the first 10 or so minutes of this episode were pretty unspectacular and just a little too cheesy. Thankfully, things really ramp up once we get to minute 12. But before we talk about the meat of the plotline, guess what, guys? The subplots are back! And nobody is excited. This gives us a reintroduction to Doi, who is apparently stealing candy. Okay, and how does this relate to Maya's plight again? But to be fair, there is some very thin connective tissue there, all anchored by none other than Reginald VelJohnson, reprising his claim to fame role as an officer of the law, for all of you old enough to understand the Family Matters reference. If you have seen that show, then you'll probably be even more appreciative of his role here, even though he's not playing the exact same character from the show. But if not, you'll still probably enjoy him here, since he brings solid acting with him wherever he goes. Getting back to the Maya plot takes us to her old stomping grounds at a park where she's fixing to do something wicked before being confronted by two females who are decidedly on the wrong side of the tracks. I say that because this episode feels very reminiscent of the classic Boy Meets World episode that's actually called Wrong Side of the Tracks, where Sean found himself in more or less the same situation that Maya finds herself in now. And both that plotline and this one resolve in similar ways. The pair of females try to coax Maya into being their version of strong and tough, egging her on and telling her she's weak because of the influence of Riley in her life. But Maya stands up to them and proves to herself that being strong, at least how they describe it, isn't true strength. This leads to the main cast all converging on the scene of the event, with Maya realizing that Riley is the part of her that keeps her from doing anything too terrible, because if she did, she wouldn't be the true Maya. She'd be whatever these two are. And that's not her. At least not anymore. And that's Girl Meets True Maya. It didn't have the same kind of brilliant connective tissue that Girl Meets Upstate had, but this was still an important episode and probably the best possible way to conclude this three-part journey of self-discovery for one Maya Hart. In Girl Meets Triangle, she had to deal with the present state of affairs and its multiple forms, including losing herself to an extent. In Girl Meets Upstate, she had to deal with the future by seeing herself through the eyes of Sean, in addition to the future that's incoming now that Sean's going to be her new father. And now, the trilogy concludes with Maya dealing with her past and bearing witness to everything she could have been but overcame, in no small part thanks to the people around her that truly care about her. Just like how Corey and his influence kept Sean on the right side of the tracks all those years ago, Riley has now done the same thing for Maya. I stated in my last review that the best friendships can change you without overhauling the most definitive parts about you, and here we see the change that came as a direct result of Riley and Maya's friendship put to the test, and I can comfortably say that Maya aced this test as well. I also mentioned in previous reviews that a lot of the things about Maya's change are objectively positive, but you don't have to take my word for it, because now Maya knows that too. The troublemaker she once was, at least the kind of troublemaker where $100 would go missing and the eyes turned directly to her, isn't who she is anymore, because over the course of 2 seasons and change, she did this crazy thing that Farkle knows all too well. She grew up. If you know your Boy Meets World, the Sean comparisons are obvious, but if you've seen Season 3 and beyond, then you know that Eric Matthews went through a somewhat similar trajectory in terms of growing up from that wisecracking, girl-chasing goofball that he was in Season 1 and 2, into someone who was inspired by Mr. Feeney to better appreciate the value of education and actually apply himself. So, Maya's character arc feels like a very interesting combination of both classic characters, and nothing about it feels out of place. I mentioned briefly how the Pompeii incident was a weird way to parallel the situation, only because volcanoes can't really change their nature. They either erupt or they don't. But people are a bit more complicated than that, and this is one of those situations where Riley's at times overly opportunistic outlook makes more sense, because her perspective is to trust what you choose to surround yourself with, and that ends up being how this episode resolved. At the park, Maya didn't have Riley with her physically, but as I keep saying, both of them are a part of each other now, so Riley's faith that Maya wouldn't explode, so to speak, was rewarded here. So the volcano parallel makes some sense, but the way Riley looked at the parallel and turned it around in typical Riley fashion was a better way to look at the situation, at least from where I'm standing. All in all, this unofficial three-part saga was a wonderfully complex, well thought out, deep, emotional, and entertaining series of episodes, all three of which got some great acting performances out of Sabrina Carpenter, some great humor out of everyone else, and, with the exception of this episode, avoided the subplot tendency to give the main story more room to play out. Because of the first couple of minutes that I was just not a fan of, I don't know if I'd call this one a great episode like the previous few were, but it certainly has its moments and was genuinely a great way to somewhat resolve everything that Maya's been going through since before Season 3 even started. Topanga herself was in the director's chair for this episode, and if just for those great park scenes with Maya and the so-called tough girls, she really should direct more episodes. In any case, you all know what's coming. No, but close! Girl Meets Ski Lodge, and assuming it plays out anywhere close to how it did in Boy Meets World, we're all in for a ton of drama. It won't be as fun for me personally as it will be for some of you because, well, you're all well versed on my stance on this inane ship war, but at this point, I think Season 3 has earned it. It's given us some great character development and some great character-driven episodes, so balancing all that out with more drama-filled episodes might be the smart thing to do until we need to address the more important stuff once again. So, ready your snowboards and parkas, because in 1 week's time, we're going back to the lodge. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, go ahead and throw down a like, sub for more content, and share it all over the world. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. The coming days will finally bring the Let It Shine DCOM review, as well as the top 10 best DCOMs of all time, either right before or right after we take a look at Ski Lodge Part 1. And there might be a surprise mystery video somewhere in between, so lots to look forward to. Until then...
Are you sweet and innocent, kid? Oh, all right, Dewey.